Have you ever been somewhere really noisy,
Yeah.
like a busy cafe, and suddenly you just hear your name? Like it cuts right through the chatter.
Oh, absolutely. Or that experience of smelling something, maybe cinnamon.
Yeah. Or old books for me.
Right. And bam, you're hit with a super vivid memory from years ago.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
really makes you wonder, how does our brain take that raw stuff, sound waves, those
Mhm.
scent molecules, and turn it into something that feels so real, so meaningful? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating topic, sensation and perception.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically going to unpack how our bodies receive information, transform it, and then, crucially, how our brains interpret it all to create the reality we experience every single moment.
Yeah, it's like we're taking a bit of a shortcut here to understand these incredible processes that are always running in the background, totally beneath our conscious radar most of the time.
Right.
It's amazing how much our brains are actually building our world.
So our mission today is to follow that journey, from the physical thing, the stimulus,
Relate sound.
through our senses, all the way to that conscious feeling of, well, seeing or hearing. And we'll uncover some pretty surprising facts along the way.
Definitely some counterintuitive stuff in here.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Sensation. What do we really mean by sensation? Is it just passively taking stuff in? Or is something more active happening right from the get-go?
That's a great starting point. Sensation is fundamentally that initial step, receiving physical energy, light waves, sound pressure, chemicals, and translating it.
Translating it.
Yeah, translating it into neural signals, the language the brain understands. And the key thing is our sensory receptors in our eyes, ears, skin, and so on.
Hmm.
They're highly specialized. They're not just soaking everything up. They're designed to detect specific types of stimuli.
Oh, okay, so they're like specialized detectors and translators.
Exactly. It's an active conversion process, even at that very first stage.
And that connection between the physical thing and our experience of it, that's what psychophysics looks at, isn't it?
Precisely. Psychophysics is the science that tries to map, the relationship between physical characteristic, like how bright a light actually is, and the sensation we report, how bright it feels to us.
Hmm. Does that have practical uses?
Oh, absolutely. Think about designing anything people interact with. How loud should a phone notification be? How much contrast do you need on a screen? Psychophysicists help figure that out. It's all about tuning things to our human sensory limits and experiences.
That makes sense. And speaking of limits, this brings us to thresholds. The idea that there's a minimum amount of stimulus we can even detect, the absolute threshold. And the example for vision is just mind-blowing. You're saying we can see the flame from a single candle, 30 miles away?
On a perfectly dark, clear night, yes. Theoretically, it shows the incredible sensitivity of our rods, those photoreceptors for dim light.
30 miles. That's just, wow. Our hardware is pretty amazing.
It really is, but it's not just about the minimum we can detect. There's also the difference threshold.
Okay, what's that?
That's the smallest difference between two stimuli that we can reliably notice. Like, how much heavier does something need to get before you feel the change?
Ah, okay. And that's related to Weber's law.
Exactly. Weber's law basically says that this noticeable difference isn't a fast amount, but a constant ratio or percentage of the original stimulus.
A ratio.
Yeah.
So it depends on how intense the first thing was. Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you're holding a 10-pound weight. Adding 1 pound feels noticeable, right?
Probably.
But now imagine you're holding a 100-pound weight. Adding that same 1 pound, you probably wouldn't notice it. You might need to add, say, 10 pounds, the same ratio, to feel that difference.
Got it. So the stronger the starting point, the bigger the change needed to notice it.
Yeah.
That explains why adding 1 sugar cube to already sweet tea makes less difference than adding it to plain water.
Precisely. It has huge implications. Marketing, design, even just understanding why we notice tiny sounds in a quiet room but not in a loud one.
Okay, but detecting things isn't purely mechanical, is it? You mentioned signal detection theory before. That suggests it's more complicated.
Right. Signal detection theory points out that noticing a stimulus isn't just about its intensity or our sensory limits. It also depends on, other factors, like background noise or stimulation.
Okay.
And also psychological factors within the perceiver. Things like your expectations, your motivation, your alertness.
So like, if you're really hungry, you're more likely to notice the smell of baking bread, even if it's faint.
Exactly that. Your motivational state tunes your sensitivity. Or think about a doctor looking at an X-ray. Their expertise, their expectation of what they might find, influences whether they detect a subtle anomaly. Sensitivity, like how good your eyesight is, plays a role too, of course, but it's not the whole story.
It really shows how intertwined our physical senses and our mental state are.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the opposite problem, almost being too aware of things.
Yeah.
That brings us to sensory adaptation.
Ah, yes, the tuning out process.
Right, where our senses become less sensitive to stuff that's just constant. Like, I remember getting a new ring, and for the first day, I constantly felt it. Then, nothing. Totally forgot it was there unless I thought about it.
Exactly. Or the hum of your refrigerator, or the smell of your own home. You adapt.
Thank goodness we do.
Right. Imagine being constantly bombarded by the feeling of your clothes on your skin, or the faint background noises everywhere. We'd be overwhelmed. Adaptation frees up our attention for things that are changing, things that might actually be important.
It's like a built-in filter for the mundane.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears and dive into one of the big ones. Vision. Seems so simple, right? Light comes in, we see, but the mechanics are incredible. Where does it start?
It starts the back of the eye, in the retina. This layer is packed with photoreceptor cells. You've got the rods,
Okay.
which are super sensitive to light intensity, great for seeing in dim light, picking up movement, not so good with color or detail.
And the others?
And then you have the cones. Cones need more light, but they're the ones that give us our color vision and let us see fine details. They're concentrated mostly in the center of the retina, the fovea.
So, rods for night, cones for day, and color. Roughly speaking.
Roughly, yeah. These rods and cones then pass their signals along, first to bipolar cells, and then to ganglion cells. And it's the axons, the long tails, of these ganglion cells that bundle together to form the optic nerve, which carries the signal towards the brain.
Wow. And you mentioned earlier that even before it leaves the eye, there's processing happening. It's not just a raw feed.
Absolutely. Even within the retina, in those layers of bipolar and ganglion cells, there's a lot going on. Edges are being enhanced, contrast is adjusted, some information is compressed. The optic nerve isn't sending a perfect picture, it's sending a pre-processed, highlighted version of the important bits.
Fascinating. Okay, signal reaches the brain, the visual cortex, and this is where things get even more specialized, right? With these feature detectors. That sounds really specific.
It is really specific. This was the Nobel Prize-winning work of Hubel and Wiesel back in '81. They found individual neurons in the visual cortex that respond only to very particular features.
Like what?
Like a line at a specific angle, horizontal, vertical, 45 degrees, or a line moving in a certain direction, or a corner. Think of them as the absolute basic building blocks of vision.
So the brain has cells just waiting for a horizontal line.
Essentially, yes. Which then raises the big question, right? How do we get from these super simple features, lines, angles, edges, to seeing a whole complex object, like a face or a chair?
Yeah, how do we?
Well, the current thinking is that it involves complex networks of these neurons working together. They analyze the relationships between these basic features, assembling them into recognizable patterns based on our past experience and knowledge. It's like putting together Lego blocks.
Okay, that makes sense. From simple lines to complex shapes. Now, what about color? It adds so much richness. How do we perceive that? There are a couple of theories, aren't there?
Yes, two main ones that actually work together. First, there's the trichromatic theory. Trichromatic, 3 colors.
Okay.
It suggests we have 3 types of cones, each most sensitive to a different range of wavelengths, roughly corresponding to red, green, and blue-violet light. Our perception of any color is based on the pattern of activity across these 3 cone types.
Like mixing primary colors of light.
Kind of, yeah. It explains color mixing pretty well, but it doesn't easily explain everything. Like after images,
Yeah.
Stare at a green square, then look at white paper, you see red.
Yeah.
So that's where the opponent process theory comes in. This theory suggests that we have receptor systems that work in opposing pairs. Red, green, blue, yellow, and also black, white for brightness. When one color in a pair is stimulated, the other is inhibited.
So staring at green tires out the green part of the red-green pair.
Exactly. And when you look away, the red part rebounds, creating the afterimage. Both theories are needed. Trichromatic explains things at the cone level. Opponent process explains processing further up, maybe in the ganglion cells or the brain.
And this relates to different types of color vision or color blindness.
It does. Most people are trichromats. They have all 3 cone types working normally.
Normal color vision.
Right. Then you have dichromats who are missing one type of cone, or one type isn't working right. Red-green color blindness is the most common form of dichromacy. They can still see colors, just not the full range.
Okay.
And then, very rarely, you have monochromats who have no functioning cones at all, or maybe only one type. They see the world only in shades of black, white, and gray.
Wow. It really highlights how subjective our visual world is depending on our specific biology.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move from the world of light to the world of sound, hearing. Another incredibly complex process, starting with, well, sound waves hitting the ear.
Right, the outer ear, the part you see, acts like a funnel, gathering those sound waves and directing them down the ear canal to the eardrum.
And the eardrum vibrates.
It vibrates. And those vibrations get passed along through the middle ear, which is amazing in itself. It contains the three tiniest bones in your body, the ossicles: hammer, anvil, stirrup.
Tiny bones.
They act like levers, amplifying the vibration and transmitting it to another membrane called the oval window.
Okay, so vibration goes from air to eardrum to tiny bones to oval window. What's next?
The oval window is the gateway to the inner ear, specifically to the cochlea. The cochlea is this amazing snail-shaped structure filled with fluid. When the oval window vibrates, it makes waves in that fluid.
Like ripples in a pond.
Exactly. And inside the cochlea, running along its length, is the basilar membrane. These fluid waves make the basilar membrane move.
Okay, still following. Membrane moves.
And on the basilar membrane sits the real star of the show, the organ of Corky. This contains thousands of incredibly tiny hair cells.
Hair cells, not actual hair, right?
No, they're specialized receptor cells with hair-like projections. When the basilar membrane moves, these little projections on the hair cells get bent by the fluid motion and by contact with another membrane above them.
And that bending is the key.
That bending is the magic moment. It triggers the hair cells to fire, sending neural impulses along the auditory nerve to the brain. That's the translation point mechanical vibration into electrical signal.
That is just an unbelievably intricate mechanism. From airwave to brain signal through all those tiny parts. Amazing.
It really is a marvel of biological engineering.
So how do we get pitch from that? Like high notes versus low notes?
Good question. Again, a couple of theories play a role. One is place theory. It suggests that different pitches cause peak vibration at different places along the basilar membrane. High frequencies vibrate at most near the start, the base of the cochlea, while low frequencies cause peak vibration further down near the apex, the far end. So where it vibrates tells the brain the pitch.
Like keys on a piano, different spots for different notes.
Sort of, yeah. That works really well for explaining high and medium pitches, but for very low pitches, the vibration pattern isn't as specific.
So another theory.
Right, frequency theory. This suggests that the pitch is related to the frequency or rate at which the entire basilar membrane vibrates, and thus the rate at which the auditory nerve fibers fire. Faster vibrations, faster firing, higher pitch.
So it's about the timing.
Yes, but single neurons can't fire fast enough for the highest pitches we hear. So a refinement is the volley principle. Groups of neurons take turns firing, kind of like soldiers firing in volleys, to collectively signal very high frequencies.
Wow. So place theory for location, frequency, and volley for timing. The brain uses both.
It seems like place theory is dominant for high pitches, and frequency volley theory is more important for low pitches, with overlap in the middle ranges. Again, the system uses multiple strategies.
Makes sense. Now, sadly, hearing can be damaged.
Right.
What are the main types of hearing loss we should know about?
Broadly, there are two main types. First is conduction deafness. This involves problems in the outer or middle ear.
So like the eardrum or those tiny ossicle bones?
Exactly. Something is blocking or damaging the conduction of sound vibrations to the inner ear. Maybe earwax buildup, a punctured eardrum, or damage to the ossicles from infection or injury.
Can that be helped?
Often, yes.
Right.
Medical or surgical treatment might fix the underlying problem. And hearing aids can be very effective because their job is basically to amplify the sound, to overcome the conduction issue, and get the signal to the still functioning inner ear.
Okay, what's the other type?
The other is nerve deafness, or sensorineural hearing loss. This involves damage to the inner ear, specifically the cochlea's hair cells or the auditory nerve itself.
So the translation part is broken, or the signal pathway to the brain.
Precisely. This is often caused by aging, prolonged exposure to loud noise, certain diseases, or genetic factors.
Is that treatable?
It's generally harder to treat than conduction deafness because the receptor cells or nerve fibers are damaged and they don't typically regenerate. Hearing aids might help somewhat by amplifying sound, but if the hair cells are gone, amplification doesn't do much.
What about cochlear implants?
Yes. Cochlear implants are remarkable devices for certain types of severe nerve deafness. They bypass the damaged hair cells entirely. A microphone picks up sound, a processor converts it to electrical signals, and these signals are sent directly to electrodes implanted in the cochlea, which stimulate the auditory nerve fibers.
So it essentially replaces the function of the hair cells.
In a way, yes. It allows people who are profoundly deaf to perceive sound, often well enough to understand speech. But it doesn't work if the auditory nerve itself is significantly damaged. It needs a functioning nerve to send signals to the brain.
Incredible technology. Okay, let's move beyond sight and sound. We have other important senses too, right? Like smell and taste.
Absolutely. Olfaction, smell, and gustation taste are often called the chemical senses
Chemical. Why?
because they both rely on detecting chemical molecules in the environment. For smell, it's airborne molecules that enter your nose. For taste, it's molecules dissolved in saliva on your tongue.
Got it. So smell first. How does that work?
Molecules bind to specialized olfactory receptors in the nasal cavity. These receptors send signals directly up to the olfactory bulb, which is actually a part of the brain located just above the nasal cavity. From there, signals travel via the olfactory nerve to other brain areas, including those involved in emotion and memory.
Ah, that explains why smells can trigger such strong memories and feelings. That connection is really direct.
It's incredibly direct compared to other senses, and smell plays a huge role in what we perceive as the flavor of food. Much of what you think you're tasting is actually smell. Try eating with a stuffy nose.
So true. It all tastes bland. Okay, what about taste itself? What are the basic tastes?
Traditionally, we talk about 5 primary tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami.
Umami. That's the savory one.
That's the one. Think savory, meaty, brothy flavors. These tastes are detected by taste receptor cells, which are clustered together in taste buds, mostly found on the tongue, but also elsewhere in the mouth.
Is it true taste buds regenerate quickly?
Very quickly. Taste cells typically replace themselves every week or 10 days, which is good news if you burn your tongue on hot pizza.
Definitely good news. Okay, moving on to our skin senses. Touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. Pain seems crucial.
Absolutely critical. Pain is our body's alarm system. It signals that something is wrong: injury, infection, potential tissue damage. It motivates us to protect ourselves, to stop doing something harmful, or to seek help. Without pain, we'd be in serious trouble.
So how does the perception of pain work? Is it just a direct signal?
It's more complex than that. The gate control theory is a very influential model. It proposes that there's a sort of neurological gate in the spinal cord.
A gate.
Yeah, metaphorically speaking.
Yes.
This gate can control whether pain signals traveling up from the body actually reach the brain. It can be opened, letting signals through strongly, or partially or fully closed, reducing the pain perceived.
What opens or closes the gate?
Well, signals from the pain receptors tend to open the gate, but other signals like touch or pressure from the same area can sometimes help close the gate. That's why rubbing a bumped elbow can sometimes make it feel a bit better. And significantly, signals coming down from the brain can also influence the gate. Things like your emotional state, expectations, or focus of attention can either amplify or dampen pain signals.
That explains why distraction can help with pain.
Exactly. And it might also relate to how things like acupuncture work. Acupuncture involves inserting thin needles at specific points. While the traditional Chinese explanation involved energy flow, some Western interpretations suggest it might work partly by stimulating nerves that send signals which help close that spinal pain gate, or by triggering the release of endorphins, the body's natural painkillers.
Interesting link. Okay, besides the skin senses, we have senses that tell us about our body itself, right? Where it is and how it's moving.
Yes, our body senses. First, there's kinesthesia. This is your sense of the position and movement of your individual body parts.
How I know my arm is bent without looking.
Precisely. Or how you can touch your nose with your eyes closed, type without looking at the keys, or know how much force to use to pick up an egg versus a brick. Receptors in your muscles, tendons, and joints are constantly feeding this information to your brain.
Okay, that's kinesthesia. What else?
Then there's the vestibular sense. This is all about balance and orientation in space. It monitors your whole body's posture and movement, including acceleration and head position.
Where does that come from?
The main organs for the vestibular sense are located in the inner ear, right near the cochlea. They involve fluid-filled canals and sacs that detect rotation and gravity. This sense is absolutely critical for keeping your balance, coordinating movements, and keeping your eyes focused when you move your head.
Wow. We really take these body senses for granted.
Completely. Until you get dizzy or have vertigo, you don't realize how much you rely on that constant, unconscious stream of information about where your body is and how it's moving. They're fundamental.
Okay, so we've covered sensation, the raw data collection and translation. Now, Perception. This is where it gets really interesting, isn't it? This is the brain making sense of it all.
Exactly. Perception is the active process of organizing and interpreting that sensory information. It's taking the neural signals and turning them into a meaningful representation of the world, recognizing objects, judging distances, understanding speech. It's constructing reality.
And a huge part of that is attention, right?
Yeah.
We can't possibly process everything coming in.
No way. That's where selective attention comes in. We focus on what's relevant or meaningful to us at any given moment and filter out the rest. Think back to that noisy cafe example. You filter out the background chatter until something meaningful, like your name, grabs your attention.
What guides that selection?
Lots of things. Your current goals, your interests, your motivations. Remember the hunger example. Also, stimulus characteristics matter. Things that are intense, novel, or changing tend to capture attention. And repeated exposure can be interesting. Sometimes it makes you pay more attention. Other times you habituate and tune it out.
Like sensory adaptation, but maybe at a higher level.
Sort of, yeah. It's about filtering relevance. And related to this is perceptual set.
Perceptual set.
This is the tendency for our perceptions to be influenced by our expectations, assumptions, or preconceptions. Basically, we often see or hear what we expect to see or hear.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you're shown an ambiguous image that could be interpreted as either a young woman or an old woman, what you see first might depend on whether you were just shown other pictures of young women or old women. Your expectation sets you up for one interpretation.
So our beliefs and experiences actively shape what we perceive in the moment.
Absolutely. It really underscores that perception isn't just passive reception, it's an active construction.
And how does the brain actually build these perceptions? You mentioned bottom-up and top-down processing.
Right. Think of bottom-up processing as starting with the raw sensory data. The brain takes the individual features, detected lines, angles, colors, sounds, and pieces them together to form a perception. It's data-driven, building from the parts to the whole. Okay, like assembling a puzzle from the pieces.
Exactly. Then there's top-down processing. This is where our existing knowledge, experience, expectations, and context guide the interpretation of the sensory input. We recognize patterns as meaningful wholes.
Like seeing a familiar face, even if part of it is obscured.
Perfect example. Or reading handwriting that's messy. You use your knowledge of words and language, top-down, to figure out what the scribbled shapes, bottom-up, mean. Usually, both processes work together seamlessly.
It's a constant interplay. Now, the Gestalt psychologists had a lot to say about how we organize perception, didn't they? Those principles of grouping.
They did indeed. The Gestalt school emphasized that we tend to perceive things as organized wholes or patterns. Gestalt means whole or form in German, rather than just collections of separate sensations. They identified several principles describing how we automatically group elements.
What's a key one? A fundamental one is figure ground perception. We automatically divide our visual field into the figure, the object or elements that command attention, and the ground, the background against which the figure stands out.
Like seeing words on a page, the words are figure, the white page is ground.
Exactly. And sometimes figures can be ambiguous, like those reversible images where you can see either a vase or two faces depending on what you perceive as figure versus ground.
Ah, yes. Those are fascinating. And related to seeing things as stable wholes are the perceptual constancies.
Right. Perceptual constancy is our tendency to perceive objects as stable and unchanging in size, shape, color, brightness, even though the sensory information we receive from them changes drastically depending on viewing angle, distance, or lighting.
So a dinner plate still looks round even when we see it tilted as an ellipse.
That's shape constancy. Or someone walking away from you shrinks on your retina, but you perceive their size as constant. That's size constancy. We also have color constancy. An apple looks red in different lighting, and brightness constancy.
Why are these constancies so important?
They make the world predictable and stable. Imagine if objects seemed to constantly change shape and size as you moved around. It would be chaotic. Constancies allow us to recognize objects reliably.
It definitely makes life easier. Okay, how about perceiving the third dimension, depth? Our retinas are flat, right?
They are, yet we see a 3D world. We rely on depth cues. Some are binocular cues, meaning they require both eyes.
Right.
The main ones are retinal disparity, because our eyes are set apart, they get slightly different views of the world. The brain compares these two images, and the difference, the disparity, tells it about depth. More disparity means closer.
Okay. And the other binocular one?
Convergence. How much your eyes have to turn inward or converge to focus on an object. More convergence means the object is closer. You can feel your eye muscles working when you focus on your fingertip near your nose.
Ah, yeah, I can. What about cues that work with just one eye?
Those are monocular cues, and there are lots of them. Artists use them all the time to create depth on a flat canvas. Things like relative size. If two objects are assumed to be the same size, the one casting a smaller image on the retina is perceived as farther away. Interposition or overlap. If one object blocks the view of another, the blocking object is seen as closer.
Okay.
Then there's relative clarity. Distant objects look hazier. Texture gradient textures look coarser up close and farther away. Linear perspective, parallel lines, like roads or railway tracks, appear to converge in the distance. And shadowing patterns of light and shadow can create a sense of three-dimensionality.
Wow, our brain uses a whole toolkit of tricks to build that 3D view.
It really does. And for perceiving motion,
Yeah, how do we see movement?
two basic cues seem most important. One is the actual path of the image moving across the retina. The other is the changing size of the object. An object getting larger on the retina is usually perceived as approaching.
Clever. But sometimes our perception gets fooled, right? Visual illusions.
Absolutely. Visual illusions are fascinating because they reveal the assumptions and shortcuts our perceptual system normally uses. They're misperceptions of visual stimuli.
Like those famous ones. Molar liar, with the lines and arrows.
Exactly. The lines are the same length, but the arrows pointing inward or outward make one look longer. Or the Ponzo illusion, where two identical lines placed between converging lines, like railway tracks, look different lengths the farther one looks longer.
Why do those happen?
Often it's because the brain is applying depth cues inappropriately to a 2D image. For Ponzo, it interprets the converging lines as perspective, assumes the top line is farther away, and uses size constancy to correct its perceived size, making it seem larger.
Applying 3D rules to a 2D drawing.
Pretty much. Another illusion of movement is stroboscopic movement. This isn't really an illusion in the same way, but it's how movies work. A rapid sequence of still images creates the perception of smooth motion.
Right, persistence of vision. And there's that idea about culture influencing illusions, the carpentered world thing.
Yes, the carpentered world hypothesis. It tries to explain why people from cultures with lots of straight lines, right angles, and rectangular buildings like Western societies tend to be more susceptible to the Muller-Lyer illusion than people from cultures with more rounded or irregular structures.
Why would that be?
The idea is that living in a carpentered world trains our brains to interpret certain angles as depth cues related to corners, like the inside or outside corner of a room. When we see those angles in the 2D illusion, we automatically apply those depth assumptions, leading to the misperception of length.
So our environment shapes our basic perception.
Fascinating.
What?
Okay, wrapping up. There are a couple of controversial areas, too. Subliminal perception.
Right. Subliminal perception is the idea that we can perceive stimuli presented below the threshold of conscious awareness, and that these might influence our thoughts or behavior. Think hidden messages in ads, that kind of thing.
That's a word. The research is complex and debated. There's some evidence for very subtle, short-lived effects under controlled lab conditions, but the idea of powerful, unconscious persuasion through subliminal messages is generally not supported by strong scientific evidence. It's easy to overstate the effects.
Okay. And the other one, ESP.
Extrasensory perception. ESP refers to perception that supposedly happens outside the known sensory channels, things like telepathy, mind reading, clairvoyance, perceiving distant events, precognition, seeing the future.
What's the scientific take on that?
Well, despite decades of research, there's currently no reliable, replicable scientific evidence to support the existence of ESP. Claims often based on anecdote or flawed experiments. From a scientific perspective, it remains highly controversial and unproven.
Got it. Areas still under discussion, let's say.
Definitely areas that capture the imagination, but lack solid scientific backing for now.
So let's try and pull this all together. We've gone from raw physical energy,
Yeah.
light, sound, chemicals, hitting our specialized sensory receptors
Which translate that energy into neural signals.
that travel to the brain. And then the brain gets really busy with perception, organizing, interpreting, using attention, expectations, past experiences.
Applying principles like figure ground, constancies, depth cues, using both bottom-up analysis of features and top-down knowledge.
To construct what we experience as reality.
So what does this all mean, really?
I think it means that our experience of the world isn't just a passive recording. It's an active, ongoing construction project carried out by our brain. Sensation gives us the building materials, but perception is the architect and builder, shaping it all based on blueprints drawn from our biology, our psychology, and our history.
Right. Which leads to a pretty provocative final thought, doesn't it? If our perception is so actively constructed, so influenced by our individual filters, our expectations, motivations, culture, past experiences, how much of what we think is objective reality is actually just our reality, our unique interpretation? It really makes you question if truly objective observation is even possible for us. Or are we all, to some extent, living inside our own personally curated sensory bubble, experiencing a version of the world tailored by our own brain?
Something to definitely think about next time you look out the window or listen to the sounds around you. Are you seeing it or your brain's best guess of it? Food for thought.